Today's sponsor of the Vision Quest podcast is 920 Hat Company. Leather patch hats are in, and 920 Hat Company is here to hook you up with your very own custom hat. All patches are lasered on top-grade genuine leather and on popular brand hats like Richardson and FlexFit. Whether you're looking to show off your business or want a one-of-a-kind hat for yourself, 920 Hat Company can do it all. All the hats are handcrafted right in the Fox Valley, but worn across America. With over 500 hats in stock, they guarantee fast turnaround times. Honestly, Liam, looking at these hats, solid, right?
Yeah, they're pretty. I like them.
I like that patch itself.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, one-of-a-kind stuff. I know his name's Trevor. He does great work. He's actually gotten I think we got a knit hat coming.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, we got that coming. So we're really excited to have these guys on board as a sponsor. So get down to check them out on Facebook. I believe they're on Instagram. Check them out, man. They got the best hats, I think, in the Fox Valley, if not in the state.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. So get down to 920 Hat Company on social media and check them out. Okay, everyone. This is Brad back here again with the Vision Quest podcast for Grow Wrestling. This is episode 4 of hopefully thousands. We'll see what we can do. I am here, and I'm actually extremely honored to be able to talk with the Greco Roman man and master of USA Wrestling. This is Gary Mayabb. Gary, thank you very much for your time.
Oh, absolutely. No, thank you, Brad. I appreciate you and all you guys do to actually grow wrestling. That's a big part of what I want to get done. And so I feel we're working together on this. I love it.
Yeah. And, the thing, too, with especially Greco, not a lot of people know it. We'll put it that way. And I know that there are some people who have their own opinions on it, which is great. I think it's a great sport. Now, you came up. Did you start it when you came up and saw wrestling? Where it was obviously folk style. Where did you start, and where did your love for wrestling start?
I've been so fortunate all my life. I've had great coaches. I mean, from day one, literally, and men that are in Hall of Fames, and a bunch of them.
Yeah,
and just so fortunate to be, plucked out by it. I mean, it was a time that I was very tiny. When I started wrestling, I think I was 52 pounds, and in the 4th grade. So it's 11 years old. And the coach. I mean, at the time, he's recruiting, but he comes into the middle school there, the elementary, and he just says, "There's a wrestling meeting at 3:00 today. Be there." And I was like, "Okay, that's where I'm going to be, right?" and both these men that indoctrinated me into the sport were great humans, and then I went from there and got a job opportunity to work with just a master coach at the university, and again. I call both of those men every Father's Day. I don't miss. They filled a void that I needed, and they took care of it. So it was awesome.
That's awesome. With that being said, when you started in folk style, it sounds like you were actually pretty prominent in what runner up for Cameron's.
Yep. We lived in Kearney until I was a sophomore. Underneath those coaches.
Okay.
And then my junior and senior year, my family decided we would move 30 miles north to a little bit bigger farm, and we had a little bit more land up there, and so we went up there and lived out in an old farmhouse, and and I went to work for a new school, and it's just a different thing, but at the same point in time, it's one of those deals with, when you're that age and you move, it's like, man, it's not good. I had roots there, and I loved it there, but then all of a sudden you meet, there's 2 people that are still really into my life right now from high school, and both of them were on the wrestling team, and then our best friend was the one that may have changed my life the most of any of them, and Charles Scott, he was our first state champion at that new school. The old school had several state champions, but we didn't have any.
Right.
And he became our first state champion as a junior, and was one of our best friends. And And unfortunately, he got cancer, and it's a long time ago, but it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And when we fought, and he fought like you could not believe how hard he fought for 2 years.
Yeah.
And what's crazy good is that he became my college roommate for a semester. Now think about it.
Really?
Cancer. And what I've always, now that, I've got children, you got children.
Yep.
I mean, I can't imagine something happening to one of my children.
No.
If they were fighting like that, I don't know that I would release them to school, Right. He just sat down with them and said, I know I'm going to die. I'm going to fight this thing, but I wanted to go to college.
Yeah.
And I still want to go to college. And, and to their credit, he went to college.
That's awesome.
We had some crazy times there. I mean, one night they had double chemoed him, and then to save his life again. And then he came back to school on a Tuesday right after that. Well, again, you know how you get sick. He got sick in the middle of the night, and I'll tell you what, we almost lost him right there. It was one of those deals where you get through it, but literally a life-changing event based on moving to a new school and getting around new people and meeting some people. And that's the thing about our sport. I mean, in the middle of really good struggle like that, and I don't compare to his struggle. I just mean in the struggle of wrestling. Right?
Yeah.
And that we learn a lot about ourselves, and at that time we learned a lot.
I learned a lot. Definitely.
My life. Yes.
Well, and that's it's funny you mention that, because we recently just had a friend of ours that's taking care of Liam, and a lot of it. Good things came from those guys, especially with Liam's what he's done. But a close friend of ours has just been diagnosed with stage 2, I believe it's cervical cancer. And, any time anyone, especially now learning about Maverick, in that situation, it's heartbreaking, and a lot of times it happens to the best people that we're surrounded by, that you can't imagine. But I mean, even when it's illness, or if it's just death in general, that you don't see that person having and being afflicted with that. And when it happens sometimes, and most times, to the best people. So,
you're 100% right, but you can't even do anything about something like that.
No, yeah, it's
inspired me. I mean, it's part of what upset me again, because I can't imagine what his siblings, their father. I mean, I can't imagine. And that young man fought like just some of the things that you would read. My wife and I, Dorothy, we would read those stories every day. Yeah. And we would look at each other and hug each other and say, "Man, how grateful we are."
Right. It is. It is. Go ahead.
I mean, it's just that's what fight is all about. I mean, there's things that I've had the pleasure and the honor to coach some really good athletes, and the best are the ones that just fight like there's no tomorrow.
Yeah. Yep.
And the ones I love are the ones that fight like that in the middle of a practice room when it doesn't, when to some people it doesn't matter. It always matters to them.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
Totally agree. And honestly, to know that there are people that are out there, not only being, I mean, that family support that either Maverick had, or even your friend had, or my friend has, it's got to help them also on the way to wherever it is, whether it's healing or anything like that. But that's minuscule compared to the amount that they have inside of the want and desire to be able to go forward, and whether it's to fight it or making the decision also to not fight it, knowing that you're, sometimes can be at a certain point when where they're just like, I'm going to live, I'm going to do what I got to do, and I'm going to live to the fullest no matter what's going on. I don't care if it's cancer, I don't care what it is. And if we could put that in every athlete, I tell you what, I don't think Russia would touch us.
No, if you could bottle it and sell it, I don't know if it'd be worth as much as we think it is now if you could somehow buy it. But at the same point in time, I mean, it is. It's what it's all about, right?
Yep, correct. So with what you did in wrestling in the folk style region, what were some of your accomplishments? I mean, even from a kid, what did you get out of wrestling that kept you going as a youngster? I mean, was it winning a state championship? And we know that, college coaches aren't paying attention to it. But to you, what kept you going when you were a kid in wrestling? I mean, because look, almost 40 years, more than 40 years in wrestling now?
It's 50 right now.
50?
Yeah. I've been wrestling for 50 years. And I was 11 and now I'm 61. So,
right.
But it is. It's my friends. It's the people around you. I mean, you are surrounded by people that have the things that you and I were talking about. It's the war, and just I always tell my athletes that the reason why you should wrestle is because I think you'll hold your children differently.
Yep.
I think that that when you stare into the eyes of your kids, you know who you are because you've been tested.
Yep.
And not just, you've been tested in a wide variety of ways. I mean, you look at the match that we just got through watching, and you think of Jordan Burroughs breaks his ankle and wins a world title and wins another world medal, and you look at it and go, okay, and no one knew he had broke it.
Right.
They make sure you go out, and you think of Kenny Monday and what his struggle was when he won his Olympic gold and he was injured and now what are we going to do? Well, we're going to hide it, and then he's just going to suck it up and figure it out. And David Taylor was talking tonight about coming off of that bad knee injury that he had.
Yep.
It's a part of what we do. I mean, I had double digit trips to the emergency room while I was in college.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things that you just had 8 knee surgeries, both hips replaced, both shoulders reconstructed, one of them right twice.
Man.
There's very few things that are the way they were supposed to be.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, my mom would sometimes tell me, when you get older, you're not going to like the fact that you wrestled. And I would always tell her, I hope I never feel like that because I know what it has given me.
Right.
And I don't know of a substitute. And Brad, I appreciate everything that you've done because at the end of the day, I mean, I was fortunate enough I got to coach soccer for 9 years.
Yeah.
And I loved putting together a team like that.
Yeah.
And I loved watching 11 people work in unison.
Yes.
And to gain a goal.
Yep.
And wrestling, we do it more the Currahee way. I mean, you go out one at a time, but you're still trying to achieve a goal at the end. We're just doing it one at a time. There's no, pass to shot.
Right.
And sometimes if it's really well done, it's a great save on one end and a quick response on the other, and you just beat them to the punch and put it at home. Those things like that.
Yep.
What sport has in it.
Right.
And being around people. I used to always tell some of my athletes, I'm like, look, you get this in high school for almost free. All it takes is hard work and determination.
Yeah.
But if you go further than this, and maybe when in your 30s or 40s and you got that nice corporate job, you're going to pay a lot of money to have people train you. And guess what? You can't replace having all those people around you that desperately want you to succeed.
Yeah, yes.
There's nothing like that.
I totally agree. When I played soccer and even when I coached, I mean, I was coaching kids for the most part, but I got up to teenagers. I actually coached a girls team and they did extremely well coming from last place, taking second place the year after. But I'll tell you, even in training, when I was young, when I was training, you have a good group of 4 or 5 guys. I mean, some guys were on the team because they wanted something to put on their college application. You get that kind of stuff. But we also had a good group of 4 or 5 guys that we played with each other from youth all the way up. And I had a wingman. His name was Ryan Ferguson. That was my wing guy because I knew he could cross it like anybody else to me, and I would pass it to him. It was a give and go situation every single time. I knew he was going to get it just the right height, but I also knew that Derek was right behind me on the other wing if I missed it to put it up in the top corner. So we always had something to roll off of. It was like we were all together at the same time, and that was a great community as well. I mean, I can't compare it. I think right now though to wrestling. Wrestling is a special breed. It is definitely, and I think I heard you talk about it in another podcast you did. This is a small group. Once you get into an area of wrestling, it's a small community in a good way. And also, there are some bad things that come with it, but in a good way because they know what it takes. They know what you're going through, and there's a lot of that stuff. And coming and thinking about some of the stuff that you did as in the high school realm, I mean, you had to have had a pretty decent coaching staff behind you to be able to, come up from what you guys are doing.
Phenomenal gifts. I mean, throughout my whole career, I was surrounded by great coaches, even when they were on the same staff as I was. I mean, so often, when you challenge another strong-willed human,
mm-hmm.
And the thing I love about wrestling is sometimes age isn't. I mean, someone can look at it and go, "Well, you're the older coach, so obviously you should have known that." The athlete doesn't care,
right?
I mean, they look at it and go, "I'll take you down, and if I can put you, then I'm as good as you." It doesn't matter. So when you are really challenging that horse, that thoroughbred. You better have a couple of coaches that's right there with you. And again, I know it's that same way in other sports, but in wrestling, there is a true sizing up there in a moment. That is you're asking me to do something. And and again, just the nature of the sport where, we turn to an athlete and look at them and say, "Are you ready?"
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, "Yeah." Okay, now go out there all by yourself with really no special equipment and take on another human is what you do.
Yeah.
And their spirit to win is equal to yours. Let's go.
Yeah.
And there's certain things, and I mean, even things that I know I would get in trouble by thinking that, but I mean, like injury timeout. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, a wrestler can't really call just, "I want a timeout."
Right.
They don't get that. You only get a timeout when the referee blows a whistle because you're actually injured, right?
And they determine that you're injured. I mean, they may look at it and be like, "Keep wrestling."
Keep wrestling. And so it's one of those kind of things where, you look, and as an official, I can't tell you how many times I had athletes where I thought, "Man, these guys are hurt."
Yeah.
If they were head hurt, I'm stopping it. But if they weren't head hurt and they weren't stopping, I wasn't stopping it. And it was just one of those kind of deals where in most sports, you get substituted in, something changes, you know what I mean? You just don't get that in wrestling. And I think that's another dimension of what makes that difference, you know what I mean?
Yep.
And again, I was fortunate in high school. I was a pole vaulter. I ran cross country, and I ran cross country because I went out for football and they kicked me off the bus. And so, it was just one of those deals where, again, I had a great coach and he was sitting in the second seat. And I went in and got my uniform. I thought, I'm in, And I go out there. I'm sure my helmet looked like a bobblehead doll. And I get out there and I start to walk, and all of a sudden a hand grabs my arm and says, "No, you're not playing football. So go take the clothes back, turn them in, and in 2 hours at 10 o'clock, you'll be at cross country practice because I signed you up."
Nope.
And I ran cross country for 4 years. Right?
It probably worked out for the best in some ways, That's.
I tried to play in junior high, and there were so many embarrassing moments.
I think I was speaking. I think I was talking to is either Dennis or maybe it was Evan Wick, and we were talking about football as well. I played a lot. I played baseball, stuff like that. I was always short. Liam is also short. And I saw my buddies playing football. So 7th grade, I tried out for Eagles Club. They put me in a defensive end. So I'm like this short little dude. I could have run through legs. I wouldn't have run through guys. I would have run through legs. And in knowing what I was into, I think we were on vacation for Easter break, and they did some practices and ran plays. I was behind the 8 ball already because I didn't know the balls or the plays. But I wound up playing one game, and I think I got put on my face about 5 times. And finally the coach looked at me and goes, you know what, maybe you're just not meant for the sport. And I was like, I kind of figured that after I wasn't making it through practice the whole time. So I'm going to go back on the soccer field now, and I'm going to do what I'm good at.
There you go.
But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and there's a way. I mean, we find our niche.
Yep.
You know, it's what works.
Yeah. Yeah.
But what it requires an honesty with ourselves.
It does.
To that point. And so I think that wrestling, because I absorbed so many beatings that I mean, just people should have gone to jail as bad as I was beaten. But yet, at the end of the day, they just, the lessons that it puts on you, and I even had again great coaches, but they would say to me, if you survive this, you're going to get better, but you have to survive it. And so those things are, I mean, again, it's because the people around you, right?
Yep.
And you get to know that they're suffering and struggling just like you.
Yep.
And it's like, I always love that your 5th year senior and a young freshman walks in, and of course they're a stud. And, they think that it's just going to keep going like that because that's what they did in high school. And then they have no idea what you've done with your last 5 years of your life.
Yeah.
You lay it on them,
You get home. Yeah. Yep.
Right. I mean, when I walked in the college room, I did not get a takedown for the first 2.5 months. I went home for Thanksgiving without a takedown in the room. And I was supposed to be pretty good. And not only that, I mean, at the university I was at, it was just different than it is today. But
yep.
I was the 11th guy out of 11 at the lightest weight class.
Central Missouri, correct?
Central Missouri.
Yeah.
We only had about maybe 4 or 5 at 126, but at 118 we were unbelievably deep, and I couldn't whip any of them.
Yeah.
And so you just get to that point where you're like, yeah, maybe this isn't for me either. But luckily, again, had a great coach, kept me out. And, and once you get past that, and at some point it dawns on you that what I meant to say in all this is that the 5th year senior had that done to him.
Yep.
And so now, you can't get out from bottom to save your life.
Mm-hmm.
You're just there for eternity, it seems like. But at some point then you come to grips with that, and you start changing, and you make the changes necessary to adapt to that. And,
right.
And it forces you to be you have an IQ, you have to know the sport.
Yeah.
You have an EQ, you have to tolerate the emotions and the stress that it brings, and then overcome that. And then finally, your AQ, your adaptability. And if you can adapt to the sport and change it, then, again, the angles that you take on goal when you're younger might not work.
Sure.
As you become more sophisticated and really truly understand how to use your outside wings, then they'll either draw fire for you or you pass off to them because you drew it.
Yeah.
And knowing that timing, but when you're young, you think you're going to do it, and you are not enough to do it. And so, there's so much of that I think that wrestling, but again, you come to terms with the fact that, man, these guys did it. So, and they're my friends. And so there's a lot of times it doesn't seem like they're your friends.
Right. Yep.
If they're really true friends, I mean, they don't ever feel sorry for you. They just pound on you until you fix it.
More, correct. Yeah, well, and like you're saying, like with a 5th year senior to an incoming freshman, I mean, that's how a room is built. That's how, if you have those guys that have already been doing it, you kind of expect them to, I would almost call it still, even if they're beating them up, they're taking them under their wing. They're showing them, this is where you need to be at. This is what you need to do. And I think I follow that rule a lot, especially in the high school room. And that's kind of where, I didn't have the drive and determination like my son has. He's by far a lot better mind-wise than I ever was. And seeing these other kids wrestle, I mean, we go Super 32, we go to Pennsylvania, we go to, Tulsa, Oklahoma, and seeing some of these other kids and watching how they react to certain things. Every kid's different. Every mentality is different. But when that room is built off of just grit and determination, I think that, and great personalities help. I mean, obviously you're not just in there to smash and grab, but when grit and determination is built in a room and it is sustained in a room and they understand that, I mean, that to me seems like it's a huge step forward for a program.
Well, I mean, it just like the tournaments you just named off of, I mean, they're so deep. And if you're not coming out of a good room, you just can't measure up on those days. You just can't. And, the athletes that I feel for are the ones that don't get to come out of a good room.
Sure.
Now again, that's based on the winning. But we know that the neat thing about the sport is that even in rooms that might not send athletes to national tournaments like that, or to the World Trials to where they hope to get overseas and actually take on the world, literally. Yeah. I mean, that part. But the neat thing about it is, at any level of our sport, it changes these people. It makes them different, and it helps them grow. So that's the part also I love about the sport is that it could be for anybody, the smallest guy to the heavyweight.
Yep.
It has frustrated me in the past where we put a weight limit on heavyweight now, and we put a weight limit on the lightweight now. And that used to not be there, and I liked it better when it was like that, because when you make a statement that says wrestling is for everybody, it should be for everybody. And now that women's wrestling has come on, we are just now opening the real Pandora's box on this thing. This is going to be so big.
Yeah.
It's so huge. I mean, we have been in the top 2 or 3 in the world nonstop every year. What our staff does at USA Wrestling is absolutely incredible.
Yep.
And now all of a sudden they're going to have a full national feeder program. Come on. I mean, this is going to get
it's going to get great.
We're going to see the juggernaut, I believe. I mean, we've got the right coaches. And this thing is just to watch something double and then quadruple. And I mean, the explosion of it's just, it's crazy. And if everything that we say is great about our sport, and now we're truly sharing it with everyone, right?
Everyone. Yes. Yep.
Gender aside, size aside, doesn't matter.
Correct.
It's great.
And when this started coming up, it took me, like I said, I coached girls soccer for a while. And when I finally heard that they're bringing girls into wrestling, and finally, I watched girls. I wrestled girls when I was in high school, and they've always been they've just been in it. And now they own a portion of it. And if it wasn't for them, I think right now men's and boys wrestling in high school and middle school and stuff like that, programs in general will be hurting.
I think so.
Brought a lot of attention to the sport.
We used to go down to Texas for tournaments sometimes, just to get out of our region and go down there and wrestle. And we had really good success down there. So it was, if you chose the right time, especially coming right off of Christmas break where you just need competition, but you need to be away from the heat that Kansas City metropolitan area has. I mean, it was one of those kind of things where you just say, hey, I need to get out of here. And we take our team down there. And women's wrestling had been 10 years in going down there at that time. And so they literally, 2 of the high school teams that we trained at, they actually had they would have 45 boys, but they had 62, 65 girls. So they were already doing some of this
stuff.
So it was like looking into the future. And again, all it takes is someone just opening the door. It's two people open the door for me, but now we're opening the door and you talk about grow wrestling. This is what's, this explosion.
Yeah.
So it's pretty awesome.
Yeah, totally agree. And the thing is too is it's nice too that and I hope this opens it up more, especially the discussion for it. With girls wrestling coming in, the focus for them is freestyle. So I mean, right away we're aiming internationally for these girls. Right away. And I think it's the best thing in the world. And I talk with, I shouldn't say talk, I jibber-jaw with Stelt quite a bit about this. He gets a little wild and crazy when people are, they have girls with folk style tournaments and stuff like that. But I mean, at some point, I'm just happy that they're in it. But I do agree with him where we're really focused now and put them in the path of international success while they're still doing their domestic wrestling. And I'm hoping if I could petition the WIAA, I'd love to have it where high school wrestling involved freestyle, or Greco, and not to put any of it down.
Sign me up on that petition.
But I think it's one of the greater aspects, and I think one of the better arguments about wrestling, about which style is better. And I think I get into argument with Lucas Stelt about it a lot too. Greco and freestyle to me are two of the better styles of all wrestling. Folk style was us taking a sport and we made it so we liked it and it appealed to the masses. And I don't think for a minute that we wouldn't be able to sustain and do just fine if we started including all three of them and give a choice.
I would love to see that. You're absolutely right. I don't think there's any, one of the things that I try to push is that the single greatest power we have as humans is the power of choice.
Mm-hmm.
And if we can afford that choice to people and let them take ownership and buy in and responsibility and have the rights with the responsibility, then we're going to move everybody forward.
Right.
We're seeing that right now with women. But, again, I love Greco Roman wrestling. I love, but like I said, I officiated 36 years in folk style in college, and I loved that. I mean, I really did. It was, I loved being around those people. I was fortunate to call matches with about everybody that was on that fight card tonight, and and get to raise those kinds of people's hands is special.
Yeah.
I mean, I had David Taylor in a final one year, and at Big Tens, and just it's an honor, right?
Yep.
They come out, they shake hands, they fight, and you get to raise somebody's hand.
Yeah.
And how hard they've worked to get to that point. So I think that I love that part of it.
Yep.
Because it has what we've talked about before. It has the essence of wrestling, which is send one person out, they'll send another person out, and let's see what happens. And that's what we talk about, right?
Yep.
And then when you look at the different styles, but Greco, I believe, we're up here in camp right now.
Yep.
We've got an active camp going, and we're in a bubble here in South Dakota, and we just had great practices, and these guys are fighting like crazy, and they're training really well, and we're very excited for some of our younger guys that we've got in, and we've got a couple of really young Wisconsin guys here, and that's pretty awesome.
Who's that?
So
who do you got?
K.O. Cal is here.
Oh, yeah.
So is Jacobson. And so national champ there. And so, and these young guys, you're working with them and you watch this 16-year-old walk out there against a 25-year-old man and he gets drugged twice in the same move, and you walk over to him and go, hey, as you age, you don't get taken down with the same move twice. Right?
Right.
But he looks at me like, yeah, but I stopped him and said, hey, listen to me. Hold on a second. Let's not forget that you're 16.
Yeah. Right.
What you're doing is phenomenal.
Yeah. Let's breathe.
And he's so good.
Yeah.
Really talented young man. And I love how he trains. I mean, he's one of those kind of guys that when I brought him over and said that, he didn't pick up the fact that I was being a little sarcastic there. And that was what was awesome about it. It was like, listen, I mean, he really thought I was kind of on it, and I was like,
you're so in the moment. Yeah, he was focused, man.
Yeah, right. He's dialed in. Right?
Yeah,
and so just all of it, and so there's some lessons being taught daily here.
Yep.
And so we're having a lot of fun with it. But I told him the other day in practice, is we go backwards better than anybody.
Yeah.
Because when we go backwards, if you chase us, bad things are going to happen to you.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to go flying over top of our head, and you're not wanting to get thrown, but you're going to go over the top.
Yes, you're going.
And so you're going, and there, it takes a very high technical standard to get that done. You know what I mean?
Right.
When we talk about stance, motion, level change, penetration, lift, back step, back arch, we're all about that back step, back arch moment.
Yep.
And the other styles aren't quite as adapted the high level back step, back arch stuff.
Right.
I mean, we put some of these guys in the room, some of the best guys in America, and hopefully some of the best guys in the world, and we've got them backing up quickly and then throwing a hard motion on their own, and it still has to be taught, still has to be repped.
It does. It does. Well, you talk about that because Liam has started getting into, and he likes leg attacks. So Greco isn't like his forte quite yet, but in his wrestling and his folk style, he's been throwing in lat drops quite a bit lately, and he likes it. And I said, and he's a little sloppy. He doesn't close the gap between the hips as much when he's trying to. He'll try it from his knees. Stupid. He'll try it from anywhere. And I said, honestly, I'm going to send you down to Bill Kell, and I'm going to send you down to McGuanago and have him work with those guys. He goes, yeah, but I don't want to do Greco. Then stop doing it if you're not going to do it right. Just stop doing it. It's okay.
Let's do it right.
Right. So he has fun with it. But, and you think about it, though, I mean, Greco Roman, that's where it started.
Oh.
I mean, you go back to Greco Roman times, we're talking Olympiad of before any of us could even think about having oxygen, that was what was going on. There wasn't leg attacking. No.
And in Europe, the reason why Greco is so big is because it's the sport of kings. Mm-hmm. Swedish kings and other people, they would wrestle Greco because a king never gets on their knees. Royalty never gets on their knees.
Right.
And so if we're going to wrestle, we're going to do it standing.
Yeah.
And I just think that, so there's a lot to that too. And I taught history for 3 decades at high school level. And I love all of that stuff, right? I mean, when we start talking about Beni Hussein and 5,000 years ago in Egypt, and we look on the wall and see actual wrestling matches, I mean,
all ties. That's right.
We got a history that just can't hardly be replaced.
Right. Well, and you can't. That's the other thing too, and that's kind of where I know where Lucas is coming from, but that's kind of where you gotta give Greco its place. It may not be popular. I think as far as states go, I think Wisconsin's one of the top ones when it comes to producing Greco. In my eyes, that's my opinion. But
your opinion's pretty good.
when you look at what's come out and what's been going out and think, I mean, we got Alston Nutter, we got Macy Kilty, who I'll be talking to her, I think, when she's back from France. We have all these kids, and she did quite a bit of Greco. I know she's freestyle, but she did some Greco. But I mean, all these kids that are coming out of the state, I mean, now that we have a good groundwork, I mean, have you seen growth in every state, or is it still kind of a slow going thing with all the other states with Greco?
I mean, we're seeing significant growth right now. We really are. We're excited about it. We have a group of developmental coaches now called US Grit.
Okay.
And they're across the country, literally. And they're going to do some exciting things this spring if we can just get on the mat full time again.
Yeah.
Right now, and if we can get that done, there's going to be an awful lot of things there. But I agree, it's growing now. At times, it seems the rich get richer, because there's this tradition there, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you're a Wisconsin Greco Roman wrestler, then you've plowed through the troops. I mean, you came through a long fight. You didn't go to the state tournament and have 2 matches and you won.
Right.
You know, you go to the state tournament and have 3 or 4 matches and you won. You went through a regional, you fought, and now you got to the state tournament and it's deep.
Yeah.
And we both know there's depth sometimes just in numbers.
Yep.
But in states like Wisconsin and Minnesota and these states that are around you guys up there,
yep,
that Michigan all of those states are very well versed in.
Mm-hmm.
And when you look at the number of, Nutter, world bronze medalist,
yep,
so many. Macy, watched her win titles and watched her do great things at world levels.
Yep.
And that she hand fights, she is obviously one of my favorites to watch.
Yeah.
And so I think that part of it is it's cultural.
Yep.
And we know that for wrestling to really excel, I think it takes that culture of toughness. I think the other thing that the northern plains that you're talking about right there, that group.
Yep.
I think it's the stoicism of their people.
Yeah.
As individual people, right?
Yep.
And that culture blends itself well with hand fighting combat.
Yep.
And so I just, there's certain states that have advantages. First of all, what are you guys going to do in the winter up there? Because you're not going outside.
No.
And I know you guys do because you're crazy. And I know that I was talking to somebody the other day up in Minnesota, up in northern Minnesota.
Yep.
And they're like, hold on, coach. I got to run a few things out to the boys because they're out ice fishing. I'm like, why would you do that? but I used to, every time I would land to officiate up there,
mm-hmm.
I got out of a plane one time in Minneapolis to go over to the U of M, and it was like 13 below zero with wind blowing like at 40 miles an hour. And I was like, who would want to live up here? So I think that, we have winters in Missouri, but you don't even call that a winter. So I just think that but I don't like being cold either. So,
yeah,
but I think that here I am in South Dakota, but weather today was like something's going wrong because it was 45 here.
Yeah.
And sunshine. Now, it's supposed to snow tomorrow, of course. But I think that I just, some of that, it's like baseball, right?
Mm-hmm.
Baseball in the southern states, my goodness.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Hands down.
They play 11 months out of the year.
Yep.
Not every month. And so getting those reps and those touches, and I think states that have good winters,
yeah,
have pretty good wrestling.
It breeds good wrestling. It definitely does.
I don't think it's a mistake. I think it's a stat.
Right. Yeah. The thing that I think about the most is like when I was in high school wrestling, trying to compete and compare to what my brother did, because he was way better at wrestling than I was, and I was way better at soccer than he was. We just kind of did things because we were very competitive. Did you have siblings? Did you have siblings that were in wrestling?
No.
No.
All of my siblings were much larger. And so my brothers and sisters, they were normal people. Okay. And I was tiny. So, Brad, you have to understand, I was 62 pounds as a freshman in high school.
I don't get that.
I don't either. I can't even fathom now. But again, not very many people can be proud of the fact that I've more than doubled my weight since high school.
That is fantastic.
So, right? And so, but no, my brothers, they played football.
Yep.
And that's why I wanted to play football. And luckily, man plucked me out and said, nope, you're going to do this other thing. And he stayed with me, though, too. At 62 pounds as a freshman in high school, today, by today's rules, unfortunately, I couldn't even wrestle.
No.
They wouldn't let me. And that bothers me a little bit, because I think that, I was 2/3 the size I was supposed to be that I was wrestling. And so I took a lot of beatings, right? You can't hardly measure up against size. I mean, that's the reason why there's weight classes. And, so I think that's one of those things that again, that overcoming part, but I was still afforded the opportunity to do that. And
that's huge.
Extreme.
It's huge.
So.
And it reminds me of a kid that I coached for soccer, and the kid was afraid of a ball. The ball went in the air and he ducked. Like nothing happened, no loud sounds. He just knew there was a lot of action coming around when that ball was up in the air by him, so he'd duck. So I'm a trial by fire kind of guy. So it's not to put someone in a bad position. I know where they're going to be at, so I put them in at goalie. Because you're not going to avoid a ball if you don't want to be, I guess, embarrassed, for a lack of a better term, in the goal. Well, I put him in a couple times. He got hit by a ball a couple times. He kind of, of course, he thought he was hurt, so I brought him out, put another guy in. I put him right back in at goalie again. Because he wasn't like telling me, no, I don't want to go in. I'm like, all right, he's got the mentality. He wants to do it. By the end of that season, that kid was he was taking a ball to the chest and was able to withstand all the stuff. When that happened, when the ball went up in the air and he actually went to go for a header, I took him out, and I think I treated him like Rocky Balboa just won, like the national championship of boxing. Cause I was like, that's it. That's all you needed to do. You had a fear, you had something wrong, but I was also able, it was nice to see a kid being able to go out and accomplish something as simple as just not being afraid. And
well, I mean, that's the thing. I mean, when you see someone overcome their fears and then at some point begin to excel, is there anything better than that?
Never.
It doesn't get better than that.
Never.
You can get your hand raised all you want, but at the end of the day, getting your hand raised, it depends on who you're wrestling with, or who you're winning against. But in that, you were winning with yourself. Yep. And again, nothing better.
Yeah.
We used to take, I had a team that I didn't think was physical, like the first 3 teams I had that I was fortunate to have on the soccer field.
Yep.
So we went inside in the gym, and the bleachers were there.
Yeah.
It was on a slick floor. And I put a little bitty ball down and said, we're playing with this. But what that little ball did was it brought an awful lot of physicality.
Sure did.
And the bleachers, they could check them into the bleachers. And pretty soon, it didn't matter how bad people were slide tackling us. I've already been hit by my teammates much harder than that.
Yeah.
They drilled me into the bleacher. Now, luckily, again, no one got really injured. And
sure.
I got lucky.
Yep.
Because I made a bunch of mistakes when I was
that's all right.
But, at the end of the day, those guys went out at the end of the year and just played like warriors.
Yeah.
And nothing bothered them. I mean, go up for a header and get your feet swiped from you and land on your head, and they just got back up and let's go. And so, I mean, and I wanted it too, because, when someone pulls on your shorts or trips you in the wrong way and they don't get called for it and you want retaliation, these guys didn't do that anymore. They were like, I got put in the bleachers. This doesn't bother me.
Yeah.
And then they win. And it's that, and again, coming from a position of, and again, I don't think my guys were actually full-blown fearful of it, like
sure.
you were talking about that, but they didn't like it.
Yeah.
And then, but then you turn it up another level, and, again, I might be able to say that if I could live in Wisconsin for a couple of winters, I might adjust, but I don't want to adjust.
Nope.
So.
Nope. Trust me, I'm 40. I'm going to be 40. I'm going to be 42 next week, and I'm already kind of looking like I'm in Washington right now, and it's the middle of January, and it's like 50 degrees and raining. And I'm like, I kind of like this. This is kind of nice. I could handle.
Yeah.
But
there's going to come a day I'm going to be on a beach with a bunch of books.
I can't wait. I can't wait for that day. Because I mean, you put so much time into the sport and dedication. I mean, especially with Greco. So you started out as a folk style wrestler. What was your first Greco competition?
I was a sophomore in high school, and again had a great coach, and I had gone to a tournament my freshman year, but because of, it's one of those you weigh in and then and I wrestled one guy.
Oh.
So, and so I think he was mainly a folk style wrestler too. So I don't even count that match because I don't think we actually wrestled Greco. We just didn't shoot on legs, right?
Sure, right.
So, but my sophomore year, I mean, we actually started training it, and luckily my coach had a great friend, and he brought this friend in a couple of times, and then the friend allowed us to go down to his practices, and he was a Greco. I mean, he understood Greco, so we went down there, and I don't know. The rest is I fell in love with it, and I wanted to do both. And
yeah.
In the trials in '80, I went to both styles. And I was sophomore in college, so I went down to 105.
Yep.
But then after that, then my college coach came to me and said, "Look, you can't keep wrestling 105 because I need you at 118, and so you're just too small, and you're getting, So I did. I went up to 114 then in the spring and summer, and then wrestled 118 in college. And so, but that was again a good start. And that's what we're trying to get to right now. I mean, whether it's for, women's wrestling, the opportunity is now blossoming, and that there's going to be a payoff.
Yeah.
And I feel the exact same way about Greco. The more coaches, we have to stop having Greco be an elitist sport.
Sure.
Right? I mean, sometimes because of small numbers, we look at it and go, well, we're elite. Well, we should not want to be elite. What we want to do is we want a seat at the table.
Yeah.
And that means pull up a chair and be part of the full-blown wrestling community. In order to do that, we have to have one of the struggles that women's wrestling has right now is what? With such an upsurge in such a short period of time,
mm-hmm.
you've got a lot more coaches now.
Yeah. Across
the country, a lot of high school coaches for women are male coaches right now that just are, like at one of my old high schools. I mean, they just walked in one day and said, "Coach, you need to do both." And it was that simple, right? You're coaching both. And so, and then luckily the next year, because it grew so rapidly,
yep,
they had to hire another coach.
Yeah, so, right. Yep.
Well, a whole nother staff is what they ended up doing, which is good. I mean, they hired another staff.
Right.
And so those are things where there may be a shortage of coaches, and coaches drive everything.
Yeah, I agree.
Because coaches drive it. I mean, if we do not expand our coaching pool in Greco, we need to stop talking about grow wrestling.
Yep.
In the form of Greco.
Yep.
We need to make that happen. And I really do believe that we're starting to move that direction. So it's exciting.
And speaking of that, I think you guys recently gained another coach up at NMU for Greco with Bissick.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. No, what I know of, Jamie. What is he? Does he have experience in it? Has he been in it a while?
Yeah, I mean, Greco-wise, and this is one of those things where if we're not careful, one of the things that you hear sometimes that I mean, it really makes me shudder as a human. But when I hear someone turn to someone and say, "You don't know Greco,"
mm-hmm.
What we're trying to get people to understand is that Greco if you work with athletes in the style of Greco Roman wrestling, and then you take them to a tournament.
Sure.
If you do those two things, then you are a Greco coach. And I got so fortunate. I was actually getting ready to come on this trip, and so I ran out to I don't know, a department store real quick, and to pick up a couple of things because I need a couple of things for the trip.
Yep.
And somebody in the aisle says, "Mr. Brooks," and I turn and look, and everybody's got their mask on, and I look up, and I'm like, so it was one of my strikers' dads, right? And and I went over and kind of gave him an elbow bump,
Yeah.
And I said, "Hey, listen, how's your son doing?" And he said, "Great," and talked about him and everything, and life is good, and I finished out. I just said, "Look, I cannot thank him, you, everybody that allowed me a chance to walk in and go to work in a sport that I knew nothing about.
Right.
So,
right.
We're not there at NMU. I mean, James understands this thing.
Sure.
But not only that, he brings to the table, I think, some unique qualities that they were looking for. Because what's one of the areas we got to do? I mean, in wrestling, we always talk every day about technique.
Sure. Yep.
But at the end of the day, what we really need is we need more people recruiting to get us where we need to be.
Right.
I mean,
right.
You think about major programs at universities and major anything, companies, it doesn't matter. One of their number one duties is recruitment.
Yep.
And I think this man's going to be great at it.
That's good.
And I bring that up not to diminish the knowledge of Greco. That's not my point.
Sure.
My point is, I think that while we're talking about, I mean, we can talk technique and all of that all the time. I mean, that's what wrestling's all about.
Yeah.
And he's going to be great at that. Mm-hmm. And not only that, you have, I believe, one of the best technical coaches we have in America with Coach Bisick there.
Oh, yeah. Hands down.
Right?
Hands down.
And so, I mean, when we're really talking about needs in wrestling,
yeah.
I mean, I think if I was to go back and try to run a scholastic program again, I might just hire somebody that their full-time job is that. Because universities do that.
Yep.
They have departments in it.
Mm-hmm.
And then you look at how successful college wrestling is in America. I don't think any of that is by chance.
No.
I mean, last Monday we were on a grit call, and we were fortunate enough to have Jamie Nelson on, the RTC director for the Gophers.
I know Jamie well.
Right.
Yep.
And that man doesn't think like most wrestling people.
Right.
But what he does is he brings something to the table that says, if you want to really grow wrestling, then we need to quit thinking about single legs only.
Yep.
And every coach will tell you that the technical, tactical aspects, well, first of all, that's the fun part, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I the other night I got done working around 3 a.m. and I just couldn't go to sleep yet. I was still fired up for camp and everything. And because when camp starts, the other work doesn't stop, as you know. I mean, just like on the road, you still got to work.
That's right.
So it's long days, right?
Yep.
But I watched another 3 matches at Russian Nationals, right?
Yeah.
I love stuff. I want to learn something new every day.
Every day.
I think that I do think that Northern. I think that another thing that you're always looking for is a balanced staff. Mm-hmm. And if you have 3 people and they're the same,
yep,
then you have failed somehow.
Correct. Yep.
And people say, well, it's easy to get them all on one page. Yeah, but it's one page, and you're not going to whip anybody with one page in it.
Nope.
You better get a volume.
Yep.
Because you have people that are going to Super 32s and all these things.
Mm-hmm.
Well, how do you get those onto your team? Because everybody's talking to those kids.
Well, right.
Everybody wants.
Yeah. Well, I mean, guys, when we're over there watching the high school kids at Super 32, man, I mean, that room is filled, in the high school room is filled with college recruiters. Filled. I mean, they have a dedicated section in the bleachers for college recruiters. And it's filled. And it's like, holy cow, like I came from a world, and you may feel the same, but I came from a world when wrestling was, you might have driven 2.5 hours maybe to go to a local tournament. You didn't have Iowas, you didn't have preseason nationals, you didn't have Super 32s. And even in the Greco, like I'm sure they still had they still had the worlds and stuff like that, but my brother and I didn't know where to go compete for that stuff. It's everywhere now. And I think you're right in the thinking of, especially with whoever you're putting together in a program, not only just fresh eyes, but you want fresh minds, and not fresh minds that always think alike and are like, yeah, I love that. They got to argue. They got to be able to figure a middle, because I mean, it's just like wrestling. Everything comes down to wrestling. You have to have different angles.
You're right. you have to attack every problem from multiple angles anymore.
Right.
You cannot ask an athlete in today's world to do what we did from the standpoint. If one of my coaches would have said, Gary, that's a wall, go through it, do not go through that door, I wouldn't have stopped and said, well, why not use the door?
Yeah.
I'm going to the wall, and I'll hit it until he stops me, probably.
Yep.
Or I fall asleep.
We fall asleep, so, right.
Either way, I mean, and luckily for us, athletes today are so much more sophisticated.
Right.
And I'm even at the point now where I'm not so sure. I mean, I'm blessed because I get to take a lot of Olympic courses.
Yeah.
And they have their own continuing ed program.
Nice.
And I was working tonight and I look at my phone and I just get a text from one of the directors of education there and said, hey, I haven't heard from you in a month, and how's things going type thing. Happy New Year. And I shot back, that I'd finished 2 courses that she had worked with people to get started.
Yeah.
And it wasn't her course anymore, but I was on these other 2 courses. And like one of the courses I took was a 3-week course on resiliency, learning how to be more resilient.
Wow.
Now, no one taught me that before.
No.
Right?
No.
I learned the hard way.
Right.
And so, coaches, and with the internet, whether it's the master's courses or whatever you want to take, you can get on the internet and learn anything you want to learn.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if you want to do a deep dive in resiliency, you can. If you want, and resiliency, if you're not finding ways of teaching resiliency, you're really not teaching wrestling.
Right.
Because this is going to be a long-term struggle.
Yeah, big time.
You're going to have to overcome injury. You're going to sit for a year and then come back, and you got to go right back to taking on another human and getting it done.
Again.
There's so much of this that's out there that, there's not enough time to learn everything that we want to learn for the safety and welfare and the advancement of our athletes.
Yeah. Yep.
And so again, I hope that none of your viewers takes my comments before saying I'm not ready to talk about the accolades of technique or tactics with Coach Sikorsky. They're in one issue there with NMU.
Mm-hmm.
In Greco, we're so thankful for NMU anyway.
Yeah.
My goodness, to have a university that dedicated its entirety in Greco.
Yeah. Yeah.
Think about this. If we had 10 NMUs in the United States, just 10.
Oh man.
We wouldn't even be having this conversation about Greco.
Forget about it. Forget about it. Well, it's with Bill Colley and what he's done with Ringers, starting that program at that high school. That was huge, and obviously COVID kind of put a burn on it, and it's unfortunate. I contacted him to find out what was going on with it because I was on the verge of sending Liam down there. I said, "This is to me." Because he loves folk style, he does it, but I think in a kid's mind, they're like, oh, I don't like it because they can't get a grasp of it because they don't have the time, and like you said, coaches, they don't have the coaches that have the knowledge to be able to do it. The coach would probably love to, but he's probably thinking in his head, I don't want to coach him in this because I'm going to screw him up. But at the same point though too, when you have these programs and I hope, and I'm going to talk to Bill, I'm going to have those guys on too. I hope and pray that they do it again because it saw the kids that they had in there and watching the development that they had moving along was huge. It was huge.
Well, first of all, it's an idea that I believe has come of its time.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like you. I hope that there's a way to go right back to the drawing board. We just got caught in a bad time.
Yep.
There was bad timing for it. That was all it was.
Yep.
The idea is right. And the way that he was
losing you a little bit. There you are.
There you go. Yeah. No, I was just saying that, Coach Cowley, he opened up doors and he gave the power of choice to people. If this is what you want to do, Lucas Stelp talked. He wants people to wrestle Greco.
Yeah.
And to his really accolading of his is that he's willing to say something that other people say all the time. It's like, I just wrestle folk style, and no one looks at them like, really?
Right.
Or someone might say, well, I just love freestyle. That's the only thing I want to do.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, that's pretty awesome. But if someone says the only thing to do is Greco, it's like, what are you talking about?
Huh?
So, but what's it take again? It takes a coach to open a door and say, we're going to do this. And
it does.
And the other thing is that just the sheer thought of what we do in our sport anyway is all based on commitment.
Yeah.
Today, I have an X and Y axis, and the X and Y is trust and commitment.
Yeah.
And if you give us athletes as coaches, if you give us athletes that are trustworthy and fully committed, there's nothing that can't be done then.
Right.
Because it's just like the way you describe yourself to your son is that Liam, he's fully committed. He's fully in. I mean,
he is.
He's to the point where he's so sold on it, and with a personal expectation of exceptionalism,
mm-hmm.
that he's seeking out whoever is going to make a difference for him.
Yes, he is.
Right?
Yep.
It's a partner, another coach, going to the next tournament, and once they get that, all that's based on their own personal trust
mm-hmm.
of themselves and the people around them, and then their own commitment level. And again, but how often are we actively coaching that?
Not often enough.
Not enough. I mean, what we tend to do is we put a whole bunch of bodies in a room and go fight each other, and we'll figure out who wins, and then we'll call you it. But we could get more people messed up than we are doing.
Right.
So
I agree.
Success and hard work and all of it, the commitment, the trust, all of it is contagious.
Yeah.
You people in a room like that, it's just like you go to places in the Northeast
mm-hmm.
where you go down to the local pizza shop and they've got pictures on the wall of 4 generations of wrestling.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
I sometimes hope that the 5th generation kid loved wrestling, because there's an expectation there, right?
There becomes one, correct.
And you that young person doesn't, male or female, they don't get to come home. And unfortunately, there might not be 5 generations of female, right?
Sure.
You know that. But right now, if there's 5 generations of wrestlers in that home, and now the 6th ends up being a female, I don't think that matters anymore.
Nope.
I think that you're a wrestler, that's a beautiful thing too.
Yeah.
But I think that when you look at that, them coming home and going, Dad, I got thrown down today. They're gonna just once? No.
Yeah.
Come on. You get a new partner.
Yeah.
You're not good, son.
That's correct. That's it. And thinking about the partner portion of it now, and we'll get back. We're getting back to you here. When you wrestled, you were small. We know you were small. Okay, so you started training Greco, but did you have like partners that were already in the world scene that had accomplished things, or did you just have great guys that were just there, just like your coaches, but did you have teammates and guys like that to push you constantly? Or did you have to seek them out?
Well, so that was one of the unique things about what happened to me, is that the school that I grew up in, I mean, you think about it. You've got 2 coaches that were going to elementary schools back before there was even big kids wrestling. I mean, there wasn't these massive tournaments that there are today.
Right.
I mean,
right.
They would drive us 2.5 hours. I mean, at one point I went to my mom's hometown, which was like 2.5 hours away,
mm-hmm.
to wrestle a match in a duel. So, I mean, you'd come out of kids wrestling with your career with 25 matches. So, right? I mean, it's just, they can't even imagine that world.
Right.
But the thing is that that's the kind of coaches I had there. So now I go to a bigger farm community, but they thought wrestling was 3 months a year.
Yeah.
I knew it wasn't 3 months a year. And luckily I had friends and just like, going back to Charles Scott, I mean, his parents let him come to college. Well, you know what they also did? When I was 17 and he was 16, they let us drive to Kentucky. I think back now at this, and we just stuck three of us in my Mustang hatchback, and we drove to Kentucky for a tournament, and then and we didn't have money, so we would sleep in the hatchback.
Oh,
that's the good news about being small. There was 3 of us.
My God.
Packed sleeping bags, dropped the back seat down, and we stayed there. So I think we're in Memphis, maybe.
Okay.
And on one of these wrestling trips, and a storm blows through.
Yeah.
And has a tornado with it, and it comes through, and we're in the park.
Oh my God!
It's after 10, and we can't leave the park because we're not supposed to be there. and we get up like this freight train's coming, and one of them's like, "We got to get out of here." I'm like, "Don't get out of the car. There's things hitting the car, So we just got to hunker down." And the neatest thing was, the car got moved from this side of the road over to the other side of the road, and that was it. I mean, you have moments like that.
Yeah.
I mean, come on. I mean, you don't get better friends.
You can't buy that.
Right. You have friends for life when you do that stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, we didn't have money, so I went to Chicago one time. I was a freshman in college, I think.
Yeah.
So we went up for a regional event and went up there, and I just took a sleeping bag, and it got so cold in the car that I said, I can't do this all night. So and didn't have enough money to keep the car running, so it was like I took the sleeping bag, went up to the 7th or 8th floor, and then camped out in the hallway to sleep. Guy comes up, and not real security, but one of those kind of security people.
Yeah.
They come up and kind of taps me on with the flashlight. He goes, "Hey, you can't sleep out here." And I'm like, "Hey, they're in there. My buddies are snoring so bad. I got to wrestle tomorrow, and I won't be able to do this. I mean, I got to sleep. I got."
Yeah.
And he goes, "Oh, wrestle?" And I was like, "Yeah, I wrestle." And he goes, "So did I." I said, "I get to sleep in the hallway." So
gives you passes. Gives you special passes.
Right.
So with that being said, I own an '82 Ford Mustang hatchback. Mine had T-tops. However, I did not sleep in it, and I did not get almost thrown out in a tornado in it. But that, again, these unique situations. I mean, everybody's got a life story and things like that. But with a sport like this, and you like you told the guy in the hallway, "I'm a wrestler." Oh man, never mind. Do what you got to do. I get it.
But exactly. This is one thing, and it's no knock against the other sport that goes on in the wintertime.
Yep.
But, when people look at somebody and they say, "Who are you?" And I'm a wrestler.
Yeah.
But when you hear people talk about another sport, they say, "I play basketball."
Yeah.
And there's a little difference there because when you wrestle, there's a cut weight moment that no one likes, and everyone has a story about weight cutting. Probably 50 or 100, and everyone has a bad experience with that at some point.
Yep.
And it's like I said, whether it's the injury timeout or whatever it is, or you go out there all by yourself. At the end of the day, there's so much blending of these things that's so foreign to almost everything else we do.
Yeah.
That it really does become the greatest teacher.
It does, and I can't count on hands, toes, anything with when I discuss things with Liam, about school. Everything from, if you've got an assignment due and you really don't want to do it because you've been working on homework for 4 hours, sometimes you have to face that fear of, coming out to us and saying, I'm done. My brain's going to explode because kids think that they're going to get in trouble with something if they don't do their homework, things like that. I said, that still takes courage to come out and tell us that you just don't have it right now. That's being honest with yourself And I think wrestling teaches honesty. It teaches all of it. And I think Liam gets tired of me telling stories of like comparing everything to wrestling. He's like, Dad, I get it. I'm like, yeah, but I don't think you do.
Just keep doing it, Dad. Just keep doing it. Because, I mean, today, literally about 2 hours ago, one of our heavyweights here, and we've got an unbelievable group of heavyweights here.
Yeah.
And one of the heavyweights, great big huge human, comes up to me, Coach. I'm like, yeah, we're not in practice. I don't know what's going on here. And he goes, it's really serious. And I'm like, what's wrong? He goes, I made a mistake. I'm like, what are you talking about? He goes, I was in Normatec gear. So Normatec, they provide us with recovery gear.
Okay.
So they're awesome. Hyper's, these companies that help us out.
Yep.
And so Normatec is one of those companies. And unfortunately, and no one knows this yet, so hopefully you don't put this out right away, but we have to send their controller back to them.
Oh.
Because he's like, he's in this chair. And so he bends over to change the dial on it. And when he comes up, he catches the cord and it kicks out of his hand.
Oh.
So it turns on and off, but the little LED screen isn't working right.
It doesn't work right anymore.
Tomorrow I got to make a phone call to our sponsor and say, hey, thanks a lot for loaning this to us. And I know last camp you loaned the chairs to us and we sent them back to you and everything is good. But unfortunately, we've had an accident now. So, but here's the thing, though. At the end of the day, just what you just said, I mean, I could go on with so many stories like that where someone comes, they could have said, hey, this thing quit working.
Yeah.
But he tells me the whole story. It's like, listen, I messed this up, and I'm sorry because now this chair's not going to work.
Right.
Unfortunately, they sent us 2 more, so we've got them in different cabins that we've got up here in the couple. But so they've taken care of us. But still, it's one of those things where now we got to figure out what we're going to do with that too. But it always starts with, this is what I did. I messed this up. Let's move on, right?
It drags the character out of you.
Well, I think part of that, and again, does wrestling teach character and instill it? Maybe not, but it definitely sends it to the surface.
Yeah,
it definitely comes out because of, and of course, other sports do it too. It's just
right.
I haven't done those for 50 years. I've done this one for 50 years.
Correct.
So it makes it different, right? To me, I mean, and again, I've got countless stories of things that just happened like tonight.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. It's why you love being around those people.
And I honestly, I don't think there'll be a moment where I'm out of the sport. I mean, my son's 12. He's going on 13 in May. He's got 4 years till he's, 5 years. He'll be in 8th grade next year till he's out of high school. I'm excited to see if I can't get in the coaching field. I have, helping. Hopefully, Josh Wagner and I at AWA can put together a girls team for AWA. That's kind of what we've been talking about, and get something going with that. I'm a huge fan of women's sports. I think number one, when you put it down flat, when you start watching women's sports in general, to me, I'm sorry, even in soccer, but they put so much into it. Watching just some of the heart that they put into it, and just the physicality. I mean, there's questions of me, like if I played indoor soccer with some of these girls that went to universities, I wouldn't play against them on a grass field. They were hard. They would beat on you. And I was like, all right, I'm interested. I want to see what this is all about. I mean, to me, this women's thing, and I can't talk about it enough. It's huge.
And that's what draws people to it, right? I mean, as a parent, all you have to do is see your child do that one time,
mm-hmm.
and you'd be sold.
Yep.
It doesn't matter if it's wrestling or soccer. Our 2 oldest girls were gymnasts and divers.
Mm-hmm.
I used to go down there, I would drop them off at the gymnastics deal at 7 a.m. in the morning,
mm-hmm.
and they're just little pixies. And they think one was a level 8 at the time, the other one was a level 5 or 6, and so they go in the gym, and I go to wrestling practice. And by the time I get done talking to the athletes and finishing out the workout and all that, seeing if anybody wanted to be in the weight room, it's noon. But a lot of times I get back down there by 11, and they were going from 7 to 1 on a Saturday. And you go down there, and sometimes you get out early, so sometimes I want to see something. I'd say, hey, practice over, I'm out of here. Go down there, and you watch them line up one at a time, and they just off the horse. Next thing you know, they're on the bars, and you just watch them just line up, fix the hands, go again.
Yeah.
And with all explosive movements, it's taking its toll out of them.
Yeah.
And they just keep going.
Keep going.
And it's like there's times where I'd go back to wrestling practice and go, don't talk to me about this right now. I mean, I'm not in the mood. You need to go again. You need another rep. I just watched these little pixies do 15 reps of an explosive action.
Right.
And there wasn't even a change on their face.
Mm-mm.
So, and I think that all sports has those moments that make a difference.
Yep.
Yes. But again, for my money, I kind of like to step out and take care of it yourself. And if you miss it, it's all your fault.
That's right. That's right.
So, I don't know. I hope that the people that tune into you wasn't waiting to hear some good technical wrestling story or something, because it's not what it's about.
No, that's not. And the big thing too, like especially with anything that like either Joe or I are doing, we're always looking for ways not to just grow the sport. We're trying to grow as people too. So I mean, I'm always like I always tell everybody, I'm like a dad that knows nothing about it, and I'm coming at you like I know absolutely nothing. So I mean, you have a ton of stories. There's no doubt. So that means this is not going to be the last episode we have with you. So especially with the knowledge and the background that you have, and with the knowledge comes great stories, but also growth. If I do wind up coaching somewhere, I can take anything that I've learned and talk to people. And I've done comedy for a good 8 years, doing stand up, and I've done Whose Line Is That Anyways type comedy. But like paying attention, I was a landscaper going into doing comedy. I knew nothing about it. So I want to, if somebody wants to talk about going out of their comfort zone, I'll talk to them about it, because
that's crazy good.
I was dealing with guys that went to school for acting and television and radio and stuff like this, and they're like, no, you got to do it this way. And the guy who ran it is like, hold on, no, don't change that. And I'm like, why? What do you mean? I did it wrong. He's like, no, because that's different. We like different. We don't want to see anything that's the same thing,
Okay, I'm embarrassed right now because I have forgotten where I was because of what I was doing. But I was in L.A. at another one of these course functions for INSEP, a National Coaches Education Program. Mm-hmm. And we were there in L.A., and they took us down to one of the schools that's most famous for improv.
Second City.
And that was, there was one of those, and this is another one that's like that. And I cannot remember the name of it. I'm embarrassed now about it. But and what they did is they brought in, and you'll like this because they brought in a soccer specialist.
Nice.
And all he does is he studies PKs.
Okay? Really?
Yes, that's what he does for a living.
Oh.
So he knows everything about PKs.
Yeah.
And so, England had that huge drought for, 28 years or whatever it was.
Yes.
They had lost a series of eight contests in that time period at World Cup type levels of competitions, Euro Cups.
Yep.
And they lost them on shootouts. So they were like 0-7 or 0-8 in those shootouts.
Mm-hmm.
They have this guy. They get to their 9th opportunity and they win the dang game. Because he looks at everything.
Yep.
Not just placement of the ball, not what they're doing with their feet going in, what the angle is, where are they looking, are they diverting have they played a mind game with the goalkeeper, have they, what are they doing? But one of the biggest things is something that we had noticed on film watching World Championship in wrestling. So in Greco, force parterre, right?
Yep.
get put down. So what many of the Europeans do is that when they're called, the referee, they'll walk away from the referee. And the referee had to like, hey, what do you want? And they'll go, I want him down. And then they walk away from him again. And then they ask him to come back in and wrestle. And they get the guy set. And then they walk in late and they take their time and they get down.
Mm-hmm.
They do the exact same thing in soccer. And there's two ways of looking at this. Sometimes they place the ball down and they look and they just go backwards. Right?
Yep.
And another time, they turn their back to the goal and walk away from it and make the official say, hey, blow their whistle, go, hey, let's go.
Mm-hmm.
The same thing like on a penalty kick or off the angle or whatever it might be.
Yep.
But it's still the same thing. What they're doing is when they walk away from it,
mm-hmm.
they're clearing their head of all this is the game. It's on the line right now.
Yep.
This is the chance
You're overthinking it.
On goal for the last 14 minutes. There's only 2 minutes left in this game. This is everything in my life.
Mm-hmm.
If you do that, it's probably going to go bad. So they clear it, and then when they turn, their whole focus then changes to how am I going to strike this?
Yep.
What am I going to do to be successful?
Mm-hmm.
And then their confidence goes this way.
Yeah.
And they walk back up and they hit the shot of your life.
Yep.
And so the same thing that we've been looking at, but we didn't have any identifiers to it. So, I mean,
makes sense.
Again, back to your fan base. I mean, they tune in and like, okay, this guy's supposed to be a technical guru. Well, I do pride myself in looking at details, but
they know
that's not what it's about, right?
Yep.
So, but stuff like that really excites me.
Mm-hmm.
So we go out there to learn about this. So I'm enthralled with this for a whole day, right?
Yeah.
This teaches us for like 7 hours. Next day we go back, we're supposed to hear him again. But when we get there, they've got these people that know comedy and they teach comedy.
Yep.
So they put us in separate rooms in small groups.
Yep.
And all of a sudden they taught us how to be comedians.
Yeah.
Scared. So now we get to the end of the course, and the course is a 2.5-year course, right?
Yep.
Pretty intense.
Yeah.
And it is 19 Olympic level coaches from 17 different sports.
Mm-hmm.
So we all have things in common, and we all have things that are different.
Yeah.
And when we did our post-interview stuff, more than half of us said the scariest thing that we did was that one event. Going in and because, first of all, I don't even sing in the shower because I'm horrible. I know that I'm so bad that I wouldn't even sing to myself, right?
Yeah.
So my wife, she's an announcer. Beautiful voice.
Yeah.
She's a great announcer because she has passion for the sport, but she's very clear and people can, and she's got a passion to it. But I'm horrible. So at this deal, all of a sudden I draw this card. I'm supposed to sing.
Yeah.
In front of Olympic coaches.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. I was like sweating, and so when you say that, I get it. But at the same point in time, it's one of the things that I told the instructors at the end of the day. It's one of the things that truly helps me in the sport that we're in, because at the end of the day, the pressures that's on these young people anymore is at such a younger age than it used to be.
Yeah.
And everybody's got one of these.
Yeah.
Almost everybody has an internet account, or 4 or 5 of them.
Right.
And anything that happens that's bad, I mean, we used to mess up in school and no one on the earth knew it.
Not a person.
They make a single mistake in a match now that they should have won.
Yep.
And all of a sudden it is global.
Yeah. And scrutinized.
And scrutinized. And they're 16.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm so thankful I grew up in the age that I've grown up in.
I can't even tell you how happy I am.
Right? So, I mean, when you look at how we train athletes now and how good they are, but all of a sudden they're supposed to have the qualities of a Jordan Burroughs like he said tonight, when other people ramp up, I calm down.
Yeah.
Because I know the outcome of this stuff. I'm going to be okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've done all of this training, but not just, mentally, physically, emotionally. He's done it all. And DT2, all of them on the card tonight was stellar.
Yeah, they were great matches.
One of the most phenomenal athletes, but even as phenomenal athlete, even a better human, right?
Totally.
Right? And so, there's so many great things about our sport. And this is one of the things we talk all the time about because it draws those kinds of people again.
Sure.
So I don't want to beat the drum over and over again, but that's the drum. Right?
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, if I'm going to really help that athlete at the right moment,
mm-hmm.
I don't know when the right moment is. It might be in a practice. It might be in a match. But in order to do that, one of the things we've got to recognize is how fearful what we do is to them. And so that whole weekend, what I thought was the best part of it was learning about the technical ability of this answer that we've been looking for.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, right here in front of us, and this guy's, he's been paid by everybody. Real Madrid, Manchester United. Everybody's hired this guy.
Yeah.
He's that good. But then the next day, we have people that no one will ever hear about because they are either ex-comedians that did or didn't make it, doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
But now they're teaching the next. But like you said, there's some formalized training, but formalized training in stand-up comedy doesn't look like any other formalized training.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And when I started doing it, I did an audition. And, I did what I had to do. And I had, one of the guys that ran the place was kind of like, he goes, "What do you do again?" And I said, "Well, I'm a landscaper. My buddy Noah, I happened to catch him coming out of his apartment, and I was walking my lab at the time, and he said, 'Hey,' because we talked about movies. My wife, a history major, so you and her would get along extremely well. Her and I, when she waitressed, the friend actually was a bartender. We would recite movie lines constantly, just comedy movie lines all the time. So he saw me walking. He was like, "Brad, come here. I got something for you. You got to do this." And I was like, "What is it?" And he goes, "Well, we're going to start a comedy club." We still do it. It's online once in a while. But I said, "Okay, I'll check it out. I'll come and check it out." And I did it. And the co-owner of the place was just like, You do what again?" And I said, I just do landscaping. I said, I've done sports and stuff. I said, but I like making people laugh. I like entertaining people, and I like talking to people. That's why this is easy. I like to flow or whatever it is. And he's like, I don't think I've ever seen anybody ever since I've been in college that's able to just jump in and do something, especially like this. And I said, there's a lot of athletes in the world that do the same thing. I said, I'm just not like that anymore. I said, but if this is one of those things, I said, I'm willing to do it. And we had a blast. I did it for 2 or 3 years straight. And then, my son got older and wrestling kind of took over.
Yeah, it does.
But it's one of those things where now, I think about, and I even tell, I tell Liam, there are so many other things that you need to worry about other than now going out and just losing. Don't worry about loss. And he's getting there. And kids his age, because like you were talking about, you see on the internet all these high-level athletes competing, and these kids, and unfortunately the parents, feel that their kids need to get to that level. They don't let them grow and develop. We have parents that are cutting their kids way too much weight, and now I'm seeing the progress of that now, and I shouldn't say progress. I'm seeing the results of that now with some of the kids that we've come up with. They were cutting for so long because they were worried about a track wrestling profile and their scores on it. And it's like, now what? Now your kid can't handle the weight that he's wrestling at anymore. And that brings up attrition. So many kids, they're in the sport doing really well. And if they were just allowed to just develop and grow, do you notice that in what you guys do at your program? Are you like, he would be great, but God, he's got a lot of weight training. He's got to bulk up. I mean, what do you notice a lot of, like, and as much as we don't want to talk about it, but the negatives?
Well, absolutely. I mean, first of all, there's so many stories I could give on this. It's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
It is, again, for all that we've talked about for an hour or so that's great about our sport,
Yep.
that right there, that was really bad.
Mm-hmm.
And especially the way that we did it in the 80s.
Oh.
Really bad. And,
yeah,
I look at it now and say, I'm the size that I am now, but I wrestled 114.
Okay.
And so I went from 155 to 114.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't lose almost a third of your body.
Yeah.
In any way that but if everyone is doing it and everyone back then was doing it, then we were all in the same boat. We were all underperforming.
Yep.
That's the bottom line.
Yep.
I mean, I have athletes now that at age group, and I know that, a couple of years ago we were at Worlds.
Mm-hmm.
They were young, and people wanted to use plastics, and I was like, no.
Mm-mm.
It's against USA Wrestling, and we're not going to do that.
Yep.
You're like, well, how am I going to make weight? I go, hold on, I don't know, but I promise you, I can get you down in a different way, but it's going to be a lot more work than you're used to, because you're used to throwing on something, working really, really hard for a short period of time, almost draining yourself, and then sitting down and letting it soak or whatever, and letting the suit do the work for you.
Yep.
Unfortunately, that's not how we're going to get it done.
Mm-mm.
But you're still got to learn a lesson, and what we never want to learn is that the worst lesson that we could ever learn, and that is someone drop down and go into heat exhaustion or stroke. And
right.
Because that's the scariest thing, because you can't stop that train.
Right. Right.
And if you're in a foreign country, oh, come on. I mean, there's no way. And so it's stuff like that. That's the most extreme version of it. But, we do things in America and we get away with it because we're Americans, and we've got the ability to rehydrate and all these things. We think we can. And again, part of wrestling just says, that guy's my size, I can whip him.
Mm-hmm.
And before we even know who he is.
Right.
And because of that, as a wrestler, it's like, I'll take that on. I mean, just like you saying before, I mean, I've never done it, but I can do it. And, I mean, when they brought me in the office that day and told me I was going to be the soccer coach, Gary, next year you're going to coach a different football. And I was like, I'm going to what?
No.
They were like, yeah, because we've got an opening in soccer and we need you to do it. And I was like, well, I could be your assistant. I can be someone's assistant. I'm really good at conditioning and weightlifting and all that. And I can help out the program.
Sure.
And then 2 weeks before we're supposed to start, they call me back and go, we didn't hire anybody else, so you're it. I was like, oh no, that's against the kids need better than me.
Yeah.
But I got so lucky that I knew wrestling really deeply.
Yep.
And I said, you know what? I can fix this.
Mm-hmm.
So at the end of the day, that I did. And I didn't know soccer, but I got so lucky that every Monday night I got to go over and eat black beans and rice, Cuban style.
Nice.
And, the man that I got to learn from was a Cuban national player, and he knew the game.
They know the game. Those guys know the game for sure.
And then on a Wednesday, I went over to another guy's house. He was a big fan of the English Premier League and had all the video on it.
Yes.
And at the end of the day, they taught me a sport that I didn't know. And I don't profess to know it today, but we won a lot of games.
Hey. And like you said, I think a lot of times it just takes the determination. I mean, you can now, with the information we have at our fingers now, I mean, if you can't figure it out, I'm sorry, but I think you put your head in a hole and you're not doing the job that you need to do, And I think I come to the point now, especially with this sport, because of, like you said, where we come from, the kids nowadays, it's a whole different world. It's a whole different sport. I think even Greco has grown to that point where it's not your mom and dad's Greco anymore. It is high intensity. It's high flying. I mean, that's why I think someone complained the other day about the international styles because they go so quick. Because a kid could be eliminated from a tournament in 5 minutes. Well, that's a good thing. I think that breeds the competition and the drive to be better. So instead of going out on the mat and just, I'm going to try Greco and freestyle today. If the kid really likes it, it's going to drive him to last 4, 5 minutes, 6 minutes. That the whole point is to not go out there and get beat in 30 seconds. if you do, you do. It happens. I mean, we just watched some cards where it could have happened, but they've been practicing and put the time in. They know that, well, I'm going to battle this out. I'm not just going to go like, oh, I tried. They actually put the time and effort into it to get better at it. And I think now that we start to grow with Greco and it's growing, I think if people just paid attention to what the reality of it is instead of what they think it should be. A lot of people have ideas and a lot of people have some good ideas. But at the same point, though, too, I think we get lost in the newness of everything and what it's really about. It's okay, so a kid got beat in 30 seconds. Now, if he has a good background and has good support systems like a lot of us have in sports, that coach or that parent's going to tell them, you can last longer than that, and that's the whole point. You know, you need to fight for your place on the mat, not just to go out there just to be on the mat. But if you don't like getting beat in 30 seconds, don't get beat in 30 seconds.
You're so right. I mean, as a high school coach, I really had this affinity about getting pinned.
Mm-hmm.
You just don't get pinned. And I got pinned once in high school. I got pinned once internationally, and I got pinned once in college.
Yep.
And I know it's a horrible story, but I wasn't pinned in college, but the referee pinned me. And I got up. It was a college tournament, in second round, and I got up and I was like, I wasn't pinned. And he looked right at me and said, I saved your life. And I was getting beat at the time. Remember, this is before technical falls, right?
Yeah.
So I was getting beat 16-2. And the beating was actually a little worse than 16-2. and so, yeah, at the end of the day, you know, you're right. But I didn't. Now, good or bad, I never had a wrestle off in my career.
Sure.
I wrestled off, but I didn't conduct wrestle offs.
Sure.
I said other coaches pick their teams, soccer coaches, you know.
Correct.
And for wrestling, I felt in the safety of the athletes, it was better that I chose the team. Because then I didn't have someone saying, well, I'm going to go down 3 weights because I can wrestle this weight. No. What is best for you and our program is this.
Yep.
Will you accept this? And if they did, then it's fine. And I had athletes move away from our program, but I had athletes move to it too. So it's okay.
Yeah.
It's great. But everybody has their own choice. So those kinds of things like that, you know, I just think that you're so right. I mean, if you don't want to be beaten badly in public and everybody see it, sorry.
Life goes on.
So anyway, I just think that, you know, if you don't want that, then you will, like you said, you'll train differently.
Yep.
And, you know, in our high school teams, we said, you don't get pinned.
Mm-hmm.
You just don't. And if you get thrown on your back, then figure a way to not get pinned. And sometimes it means not get off your back, because there's a lot of times you can't get off your back.
Right. Yep.
It doesn't mean you get pinned. It
Correct.
means you fight the fall and you hope that time is not that far away.
Mm-hmm.
That's what's going to save you. But you're not laying down.
Right.
And, you know, I'm at Fargo 3 years ago now, and I'm standing next to a college coach, and he is looking down 3 mats at an athlete that he's seriously looking at. I mean, has had a lot of communication with.
Yep.
And this young person just laid down. They just shut down and laid down. He got in his phone at that moment and went swipe, and that was it. And it was like, and I looked and I thought, you know, at the end of the day, now, what I hope happened at some point,
Mm-hmm.
that was an emotional response. And I hope at some point there was another conversation, and maybe, I don't know what could have happened, but
Sure.
it didn't look like anything really happened.
Mm-hmm.
And the way he got up and the way he walked off did not appear that there was anything physically injured on him.
Yep.
And
Mm-hmm.
so, and the college coach said to me, that's not physical.
No.
And I can't accept that, and I won't bring that to my program, and walked away.
Wholeheartedly agree.
Okay.
Yep.
And that's a very harsh standard. But you know what? That's our standard.
It is.
And wrestling is our standard. And so I don't go against it. I kind of praise it in a way.
Yeah.
And because unfortunately or fortunately, that's what reality is.
It is.
And you're going to wrestle, there's a very high standard. And if you choose to wrestle at a higher standard, not everybody gets to wrestle in college, especially at a major Division I university.
Right.
And
Correct.
They know their room, and they know their room is so combative that if you do that in this situation, you'll do that a lot of times in that room because they'll make you do that.
Correct.
And so it's another part of our sport. Hey, I was going to ask you, Brad.
Yeah.
Do you know Greg Warren?
Man, does that sound familiar? I don't.
Yeah. Well, if you get a chance, you're going to love this.
Yeah.
I hope I give you something that you've given me tonight. But Greg Warren, he wrestled at Missouri.
Okay.
He started his career at West Point, and he is a big-time comedian. Okay. So,
really?
And the thing you're going to love about him is most of his jokes are about wrestling.
I'm gonna. As a matter of fact, while we're talking, I'm gonna look that up.
And the very first one that you want to look up is One Star Wonder. But he's got so many great stories, and he is so funny, right?
Yeah.
So we're good friends, and so he agrees one time to come into the high school that I'm working at, and he's going to come in as a guest clinician.
Okay.
Right?
Yep.
So he comes in because he's a very accomplished wrestler.
Yeah.
But he is so unbelievably funny. And after you listen to him a little bit, you shoot me back a message and tell me how much you like him, because I think you're gonna like him.
I just pulled him up, so I got YouTube sitting up with him before we get done, because I'm already looking at, and I think I've seen a couple of his things before, but I haven't watched the whole thing. That's awesome. I love the fact, and that's another thing about this sport. It's funny how like Jim Jordan, politician, came up. He's a resilient dude. There are a lot of people that don't like him, and because of him being honest with himself and whatever it is, and I can respect that avenue. Being able to get up on a stage in front of, whether you're doing it in front of 40 people or it's 400 people or it's 4 people, it's nerve-wracking. I did stand-up shows where there are 2 people in the crowd. That's worse than 500. Because with at least 500 people, you're going to get someone laughing at you. With 2 people, you might not get anything. As a matter of fact, you might have 0 people by the time you're done with a 15-minute set. So that's going to be awesome. The other thing, too, with wrestling and how we tie things all together with wrestling, like you said, family. And to me, I played soccer for so long that I can honestly say that even in the soccer community, the family isn't as tight as what wrestling is. As far as closeness, and like I said, once you get into that elite kind of, I don't know, as far as elite, but you get into a small group of people in this world that we're in with wrestling, and it's tighter and tighter and tighter. I mean, how many opportunities? I mean, look at where you're at and look at where you've come from, and in the stepping stones you've been through to get to where you're at. What was the most challenging portion of what got you to where you are now? What challenged you the most?
Well, I think honestly the death of my best friend was number one. I think that there's nothing in my past that, he perished the day after Christmas, 1980. Now, if you think about that, and then tonight I go to speak about it, and I'm instantly emotional again.
Yeah.
And it never dulls, and I don't ever want it to dull.
Right.
I mean, it's that moment that I got to be a part of something that is completely unique in any part of our lives.
Yeah.
And at our last camp, we were coming up to camp, and the day I left for camp, in December camp, coming up here for 10 days, I lost my brother. And so, you've got athletes waiting.
Yeah.
I know that, many people look at that and go, that's family, figure it out,
yeah,
no deal. But at the same point in time, wrestling becomes family, and wrestling becomes and at the end of the day, you'd said it at the very start of this thing about sometimes it's a decision we make not to do treatment, right?
Correct.
And that was the case with my brother,
Yeah.
My brother had brain cancer, and it was stage 4, and they told us right up front there was nothing. There was nothing.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, it flipped it totally different, where, it was this moment of now you don't want him to suffer.
Yeah.
So it's a totally different setting, and yet whether my brother or Charles, it's the same outcome.
Yep.
Now, it's not the same in my book because Charles was 20 years old. Maverick was 9.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I mean, I've been so blessed. I think I've lived the life of 10 men.
Right.
I'm a kid from Missouri that's been literally around the world. Last year, I actually circumvented the world in 2.5 weeks. I started in Colorado Springs. I flew east to do a clinic, and I flew from there.
Yeah.
I went to Rome, and of course, then the virus hit Rome.
Yep.
And but no one knew what was going on.
Yeah.
They just knew everyone was getting sick, and it was bad. And then I flew from Rome to Pongo Pongo, but I flew to South Korea, where I spent 9 hours in an airport where 80% of the flights were coming out of Wuhan. So it was chasing me, right? And then I flew back from Pongo Pongo to Honolulu to Seattle. And I flew into Seattle when Seattle got hit. And they were one of the first cities that really got hit as a city.
Yep.
So then I flew back to Kansas City. So I literally, I had an opportunity to go around the world.
Yeah.
And what your wife does, I got to sit in the Sistine Chapel for an hour and 15 minutes and stare up at something that I'd wanted to see all of my life. And you know what I mean? I mean, I don't.
Yeah.
Whatever I had to do to get to here, and the opportunities that I had because of the sport, and then even more important than any of that, I mean, I'm in the Winter Palace in Russia, getting to look at a painting that was shot 7 times, 100 years and 13 months, 100 years and 11 months from when it actually happened, when, the Romanovs were taken over.
Yeah.
And look at that and say, I had that picture in my classroom for 14 years.
Picture.
I stared at it almost every day.
No, you're staring at it.
Stand in front of it and go, wow, I'm here, right? So, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I'm lucky. I've been lucky all my life.
Yeah.
And I found a way not to make 4 Olympic teams, but I am still very lucky. I went 16 years pretty hard, and I missed 80, 84, 88, 92.
Yeah.
But through all that, at the end of the day,
yeah,
I've got great friends. I got friends that I took on during that time period that still coach with me now. And one of them, Brandon Paulson, he wins the silver medal in '96.
Just watch the podcast you did with him too. Yep.
Right. He's a youngster in '92, and I'm the old guy. and, at 31.
Yeah.
You look at that and go, okay, but what a great coach, great human. And I had an opportunity to interview him recently on a segment we did for wrestling.
I saw that.
I got to do a 35, 40-minute deal on him. What an honor, right?
Yep.
And it's someone that I personally know. So and what's crazy about it, we share the same birthday.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Nice.
So, yeah.
Nice.
But, I don't know how to answer because I even the woman that I get to be with is, I think, mostly because of that's how we met.
Nice.
She was a trainer, and I was a coach.
Really?
And she was a trainer at another school, and then I got her to come over to my school. But I mean, it's things like that I don't know. again, I think that wrestling molds us.
Yep.
And like you said, it creates family at a level because at the end of the day, another big project we're working on right now up here in camp is we're working on building a team behind the team as we get our Olympic team set.
Nice.
Having a team ready to go that's behind them and having like 6 people.
Yeah.
Community leaders, former Greco greats.
Yeah.
That are all standing right behind them that everybody is communicating directly with that athlete.
Nice.
If you can put 50 people behind an athlete, even though you're sending them out one at a time, those 50 are helping mold that person.
Yeah.
And
yep.
So that's what I think the family has to do for a wrestler.
Mm-hmm.
I had a college buddy of mine that is a judge now, a big time judge.
Mm-hmm.
And his family during wrestling season, they put locks on their kitchen cabinets. So they put they took 3 cabinets, they put locks on them. Now, it's a radical thing to do, but the family used a key to get food out. So everybody in the family was pretty committed, right?
Right. Yeah.
Now, probably because they didn't trust and commitment again, they didn't trust their son.
Correct.
But still, at the end of the day, that's a pretty neat, it shows that the whole family wrestles.
Yep.
It doesn't take much to watch a mom up there, she's wrestling the match while it's going on.
Right.
And you're going to see this with Greg Warren, but he's got this one deal where this stick where he goes, I walked in and my dad is watching wrestling on VHS. It's my matches. And I walked past him to go in the house late at night and he looks at it and he goes, Greg, stop. Greg, look at this. You stopped wrestling right here. Dad, I stopped wrestling 16 years ago.
That's good stuff. That's good stuff. Well, the first one that comes up, and it's funny because what does it say? Running isn't for old people. That's his full special.
There you go.
That one I'm probably gonna watch, right? But I'm gonna be on like a rabbit hole all night of just watching this guy.
I know. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
But yeah, my wife, Dorothy,
yep.
Call her Dort, right? So he says, my friend Dort just recently ran a half marathon. And I'm so lazy, I said, congrats. She runs a half marathon and I can't even finish a word.
Can't even type a whole word. Nope, exactly.
He's hilarious. You'll love it. So, like I said, I don't know if I have a good answer for your original question.
Sure.
I don't know because I think that wrestling is one of those things that you have to pass all of these tests incrementally.
Yeah.
I mean, just like what we're talking about. I mean, unfortunately, some of these 14, 15-year-old athletes that's got this amazing profile, right?
Yeah.
All of a sudden now, they can't lose.
Mm-hmm.
They're not supposed to lose.
Yep.
I mean, come on. I mean, we've got one wrestler that's undefeated at Division I level. I mean,
one.
And now that he's a coach, he's just as amazing doing that as he was doing this other.
Right.
And so I don't know that we to judge someone that harsh at 14 scares me because I know how bad I didn't know anything at 14.
Yeah.
And I certainly wasn't as good as these athletes are. But what I hope for them, though, I hope that they have the opportunity to have the experience that I've been afforded in our sport. Right?
Yep.
I mean, it's been a lifetime.
Yeah.
And I'm lucky enough that I've stayed around long enough that I'm fully immersed in it. I mean, I had a year where I actually closed out my high school coaching career by getting to sit in the corner of a state championship team.
Nice.
Watch them perform.
Yeah.
And then I get to go to all 4 world championships as a coach that later on that year.
Mm-hmm.
And I got to officiate the NCAA finals, both Division I and II, and the Big Ten championships.
Yeah.
And that's 1 year of my life.
Yeah.
And that's not to mention the other great things that happened that year, family-wise or whatever, but wrestling-wise, I mean, 1 year?
1 year.
It's ridiculous that you get to do something like that.
Well,
and got to work the national finals, Division I, at 125 with my lifelong best friend. Colin. I mean, I don't know how you get this lucky.
Time and dedication, and you talk about with these kids nowadays, and obviously we didn't have it the way that they have it, but like a kid that just can't lose and doesn't appreciate like what we're talking about, the good things that come along, like the friends you make and the dual teams, the team environment, and the kids that they get to meet. I always explain it to Liam this way. I watched myself evolve as a parent coming up with a wrestler. When he was young, and we were to the point where if he went to a tournament and didn't take first, we're talking little. We're talking 6, 7, 8, little, before things really mattered. But he would take first place at a lot of tournaments. And we're to the point that if he didn't take first, something was off. He wasn't giving his full effort. So in hindsight, yes, we were looking at it as if you're not taking first, you're doing something wrong. But we're always kind of in the push of, we know something's up. In your head, you're not doing it. But these kids now get to the point where if they lose their mind. But I remind Liam, how do you eat an elephant or a whale? One piece at a time. He wants to go to the Olympics. He wants to win an NCAA championship. He wants to do these things. And I look at him with the goals that he has, and I said, you can't always be staring at these huge ones. You have to take these little ones first, and you have to pass these tests. You can't pass an SAT without studying beforehand and having knowledge before that. I said, it all goes hand in hand. You have to break it down. I said, you have to fractionalize your athletic life. And as much as it sounds like, how do I do that? Every day. Write down notes. I didn't finish a single leg properly, or I didn't have the correct tie up. Got to work on it. When you get it done, cross it off. When you get this one done, cross it off. I think a lot of students also lose sight of the progress that they can make. Coaches can make the same progress, just like I did coming up with Liam, seeing that it doesn't matter. It in the long run, it does. I mean, when you have a program and you're trying to build a program, that stuff does matter. But at the end of the day, if they're making the progress that they need to make, as long as it's in line with the timeline they have, it's going to happen.
Right.
So
and again, that's the scary thought where you get in that dogfight match, and next thing you know, you're down in points, and all of a sudden the clock becomes your enemy.
Yep.
And those, and the deal that we do with wrestling is there's a tremendous amount of preparation for the moment that you can overcome to create a win out of what should be a loss.
Right.
And each of these are all lessons that that at some point the great wrestlers they learn them.
Yep.
You were talking about nutrition earlier. I can't tell you how many times I would go into officiate, and after the duel was over, I already called it. I'm heading out to my car, and an athlete that I'd been able to coach on a world team or something like that, or a former athlete, they'd say, "Coach," and I'd stop and I'd say, "Hey, you are having a great year this year.
Yeah.
My goodness, what are you? You just won the last 16, 17 matches in a row, right?"
Mm-hmm.
He goes, "Yeah, I'm on a pretty good roll." I said, "What's doing it? What's doing it?"
Mm-hmm.
He said, and they would almost always say, "I finally got my nutrition in check."
Yeah.
And I always call that the fifth thing. It's there's kids that can get into a weight room and really push hard enough to do squats.
Yep.
And we all know that's very painful stuff.
Yep.
And it takes a long time, and maybe even hamstring work is even worse than that. I don't know, but leg days are hard. And to be able to go in and do that in the middle of a hot summer when I always say that Olympians are different than the rest of us mortals, because they will train on average 6.5 years to get whatever, and I don't mean 6.5 years. I mean 6.5 years at the level that they need to for the Olympics.
Sure. Yep. Right? Yep. Makes sense.
And it might be a 15-year
cycle,
labor of love. At the end of the day, the 6 years, like Liam, I mean, at some point he graduates, goes to college. Somewhere in that, coming out of college, on average, 3.5 years to get what you really want to get to, right?
Yep.
And there's people that don't have to follow that. We know that, but they're
right.
very rare.
Yep.
But the rest of us, we can train, but we'll never get there.
Right.
It takes talent, character, skill, all of those. You have to have everything.
Yep.
And so I really do. I think that it's just one of those things that's the nature of the mountain that they've chose to climb,
mm-hmm.
how high it is. And
agreed.
And to the athlete that only gets halfway up the mountain, they still did a lot of climbing.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Well, you've been gracious enough to put about 2 hours of time in with me. I appreciate it. I'm humbled to be able to hear stories and you allowing me to hear the things that you've been through. This is by no means over. We're gonna rewind because there's a lot more to talk about. I know you got stories. I've got questions still, and more keep popping into my head. My brain never stops working, so I want to extend out another invitation. We'll figure out another time and date. But again, from Girl Wrestling and myself, we appreciate you and everything that you're doing, and having you around with this sport right now and the direction it's going in. I'm a big fan of Greco. I'm watching every minute that I can. I mean, I'm like you. I sit here and I'll watch, we watch these cards that we have, but then I wind up watching Russians and I wind up watching Estonians, and it's a rabbit hole, but I love it. It's the best rabbit hole I've ever been in. So we're gonna talk again, but we're going to end it right now. It's laid out by you. It's only 8:41 by me, so it's what, 10:41 by you? Yeah. You gotta go.
I got a little work to get done tonight.
You got to go. So I'm going to get out of your hair. Again, much appreciated. This is the end of episode 4. We got Coach Gary Mayabb. Again, thanks for your time, buddy. I really appreciate it.
Well, we appreciate you and Grow Wrestling and Joe and you and I hope that Liam and Jack and all the young guys grow up, right?
Yeah.
But by what you guys are doing, you're setting a base that will be better for them.
Right.
That's what we've got to get to. So I can't thank you enough. I appreciate you guys.
Not a problem. All right. We'll talk to you soon.
All of our episodes are brought to you by Appleton Tattoo, located at 117 South Appleton Street in Appleton, Wisconsin, right off the main drag on College Avenue. You can't miss them. I've had some work done. I have a Celtic cross that covers my back that was done by Jason. We're not done yet. Jason Winans and crew, the artists that he have there, those guys are the best in the Fox Valley. They are definitely one to go to if it's something that you've just been kind of throwing around. They'll make you feel comfortable. It's a very clean environment, very nice crew, and very willing to get done whatever you need done when you need it done. You can message them on Facebook. I know they're on Facebook. You can give them a call at 920-604-8289 and get in touch with Jason Winans and crew at Appleton Tattoo, located again in Appleton, Wisconsin at 117 South Appleton Street, right in Appleton. Very flexible hours, great crew, clean environment again. I would not send you anywhere else except for these guys. Appleton Tattoo.